So my name's Alicia Raz. I'm a global account manager in the architecture, engineering and construction team. And I'm delighted to be back as your host for the summer edition of the ArcGIS Update 2025 series. Now, today's webinar is designed to bring you all the latest and greatest update to the ArcGIS system this quarter, to give you a chance to hear what's new, but also an opportunity to help your organization to plan for the future. So today is going to be a jam-packed session, really full to the brim of exciting updates. So make sure you grab a cup of tea, perhaps a nice coffee or even a pint of water, and we'll get started. So alongside me today, I am joined by an incredible lineup of presenters. So before we go any further, I'd like to hand it over to Mark, and we're going to do a roundhouse of introductions. So Mark, over to you.
Thanks very much, Alicia. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see so many people on the session today. My name is Mark Wells. I am the CTO here at Esri UK.
Thank you. And Ben?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Ben, and I work as a GIS consultant in the product communications team here at Esri UK.
Thank you, Ben. Scott?
Hello everyone, my name is Scott. I'm a consultant in the professional services team here at Esri UK.
Thank you, Scott. Isla?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Isla and I'm a graduate GIS consultant.
Thank you, Isla. And Priya?
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Priya and I'm Enterprise Service Consultant in Professional Service team.
Amazing. Thank you, team. So with that, we're going to get started and move on to what we've got coming up today. And before we do that, we're just going to talk through some of the housekeeping rules. So today's webinar is live. It is recorded. So if you do need to step away at any point or perhaps jump in at a later point, the session will be recorded and we'll circulate the link alongside the slides and all the resources referenced today in a follow-up email. Now, because we have lots of updates to run through with you today, we will not be taking a live Q&A. However, you can still log your questions on Slido. So if you haven't used Slido before, please navigate to slido.com or scan the QR code on screen, and you can enter in the event code to get started. It's important to ensure that you upvote any questions that might resonate with you or even log your own question, as we will be addressing the most upvoted questions in a follow-up email. Equally, as we get closer to the end of today's webinar, the poll section will become live in Slido. Please keep an eye out for this, as it's a great opportunity to provide your feedback, tell us how you found today's session, but also give us some ideas as to what you'd like to see in an upcoming series. So in terms of what we have on today's agenda, we're going to kick things off with the headline news, a few short, sharp and sweet updates to be aware of this quarter. We're then going to hear from Mark, who's going to walk us through some of the key trends he's seeing in the industry at the moment, before we hand over to Scott, who's going to walk us through what's new in ArcGIS Pro. We'll then be joined by Isla, who's going to talk through user type changes. Then we'll be joined by Priya, who's going to go through ArcGIS Enterprise 11.5. And last but certainly not least, we're then going to be joined by Ben, who's going to walk us through tasks, which is new to field maps. So with that, let's get started with the headline news. So for many of you on today's call, hopefully it doesn't come as a surprise, but in a couple of months' time, ArcGIS Desktop will be retiring. So for anybody using the product still, it's important to be aware that the product will be end of life when it comes to March 2026. But if you're still using it on projects, it is important to note that you are currently in mature support. So what does that mean? Well, if you're using any of the components of ArcGIS Desktop, whilst you can continue to use the technology and log support cases with us, the product will no longer be getting any software updates, patches, or hot fixes. And when we enter into mature support, which will be in March 2026, support will completely be removed. So that means you'll no longer be able to raise a support case, log in to get support, or either go via our chat option. So this is another reminder that if you are still using ArcGIS Desktop, Now is a really important time to start looking at alternative solutions or either speaking to your customer success manager if you need any support. And again, if you want to go into any of the details in terms of the timeline or the changes, I recommend taking a look at the QR code on screen, which will take you through to our latest blog article. Next, we have a few important changes when it comes to ArcGIS Enterprise 11.5. Now, we welcomed 11.5 at the end of last month, and this will be the last version that will support JavaScript 3 applications. So again, if you're using Web App Builder, some of the out-of-the-box configurable apps, or Map Viewer Classic, then it's an important time to start thinking about how you can migrate onto JavaScript 4 applications. Now, there's a whole host to choose from Experience Builder to Instant Apps, but the list doesn't stop there. It can include dashboards or story maps, and the list goes on. Equally, if you are designing your content in Map Viewer Classic, you will need to look towards the latest version, which is Map Viewer. And again, this will allow you to build apps on JavaScript 4, but also unlock the latest features and capabilities. Changing tact slightly, one of the components that we would like to talk about is the Esri support app. So if you haven't come across it before, in recent years and months, we've been slowly but surely developing the support application, which can be downloaded on your mobile phone device. Recent features that have been rolled in include the AI chatbot, which allows you to have a conversation just like you would with any other individual to really try and troubleshoot issues, but also to get access to the correct resources as soon as possible. This is really beneficial because the AI and the support app itself taps into a vast database of knowledge articles, so it just ensures you're finding the right resources and getting the right support at the right time. Above and beyond that, you can also track your cases on the go. If you're using ArcGIS Online and you might experience issues, you can check the health dashboard to see if there's any wider issues occurring. But also, historically, if you've logged bugs or enhancements, you can track those on your phone and get notifications, as well as being informed when we release new articles and videos that might help you with the products and solutions. So if you haven't already done so and perhaps just used the web browser, I recommend taking a look at the Esri support app. Again, if you want to dig into any of the details further that I've previously mentioned, there's a really great blog article which you can access using the QR code. Next up, we have a few new updates to ArcGIS Story Maps. So in the latest release, we introduced support for infographics. If you're anything like me and you're a bit of a visual learner, then this is really helpful to understand trends or characteristics or tease out key messaging in your story. Now, there's 4 different styles when it comes to infographics that you can implement. And when you're working with your data, you can customize that infographic by number, description, or even icon. At the end of last year, we also introduced support for charts within story maps. Going above and beyond that development, we've now introduced support for custom axis in a chart. This is really useful if, for example, there are some values which are too high or perhaps too low to really tease out the points in your data. You can then play around and work with the axis to really see those trends, which again could be overlooked if the scale is not always that correct or as versatile as you might want it. So this is really useful, especially if you're working with data heavy information. And again, one of the most exciting bits to make its way through to story maps is support for 360-degree images. So if you're working in the planning or urban development space, this is a really great way to provide a more immersive experience for your end users. If you are interested in implementing this feature in your story map, then please take a look at the requirements page on our help pages to get started. And finally, I'm really excited to announce that we have recently rolled out our How To playlist series on YouTube. Now, the playlist series is a bite-sized series to help you get the most out of ArcGIS and support your learning when it comes to the ArcGIS system. Now, so far, we have released 5 short videos to get yourself into what's new, what's changing, some of the key questions that are coming up from you as our customers. But of course, we are going to be building out these videos over time over the next couple of months. So if there are specific topics or workflows that you think actually would really benefit from a short how-to video, then please make sure that you let us know directly or via Slido today, as we'd love to hear from you. And of course, let us know what you think as and when you get your hands on those short videos. So that brings us to the end of the headline news this quarter. And with that, I'd like to hand you over to Mark, our CTO, for his update. So Mark, over to you.
Thanks very much, Alicia. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, there we go. So, good morning, everyone. Today, I wanted to talk to you about an area that we've been doing a little bit of work on at Esri, and that is in the area of trust and ethics with location, and increasingly with AI as well. I think this is a really important area, and it's also one we're seeing a lot of interest in, particularly with the rapid developments that we're seeing in the space of AI. And when we boil it down, what AI really offers us is increasing automation of more and more complex and more intelligent decision making. Things that I would have traditionally needed to use people to make those decisions. I can increasingly do that as AI becomes more powerful. But in order to do that, we have to give machines increasing amounts of information and context. And some of that information can be very personal, and that can seem quite scary. And when we couple that with location information, which we already know can be very personal and feel invasive, and particularly where people are involved, this is an area that we need to tread really carefully in. So one area to look at in this is legislation. Surely the law tells us what we should and shouldn't do, doesn't it? Well, it is certainly true that there's been a huge amount of focus and reform in data privacy legislation in the last few years. It looks something like this. So until 2015, we were broadly relying on data protection legislation from 1998 and safe harbor regulations, which allowed the sharing of personal information between the EU and the US from the year 2000. And I was just thinking back, wonder what you were doing in the year 2000. Alicia just showed the still mapping like it's 1999 slide. That the technology back then was just very, very different. And as I placed myself back in the year 2000 and thought about that, there was very limited civilian GPS at that time. Technologically it existed, it wasn't accessible to us. Sat-navs were really barely on the cusp of breaking through, perhaps very, very expensive, very exclusive, very, very early, but not really in people's consciousness. Mobile phones were quite a new thing in the year 2000. I had a pretty decent one. It did state-of-the-art things, like it could make phone calls and it could send text messages, and guess what? It could receive phone calls and receive text messages. That's what my mobile phone could do in the year 2000. I had one of those desktop PCs like I talked about. I was definitely not mapping in like it was 1999. That was pre my experience with GIS, but I had a PC that looked a lot like that, and it had something in it called a dial-up modem. Do you remember those? I was on a call plan at home where I could use the internet every single day after 6 p.m. for free. And all weekend, amazing stuff was going on. These privacy regulations were written for that era. They were written for a completely different time, and yet we lived with them for nearly 2 decades. Through the dot-com revolution, through the introduction of smartphones, which revolutionized our ability to consume and access data and introduce things like GPS, which allowed us to take advantage of location-based services, through the cloud computing revolution, which allowed us to process, store, and analyze and exploit way more data than ever before. And all of these things combined and led to this explosion of location-based products and services and right through to the present day. But all of this time, pretty much, certainly through to 2015, we were doing this all in the context of legislation that was written in the year 1998 and 2000. And even in 2015, what actually happened was, everything we had in the safe harbor regulations was invalidated anyway by the European Court of Justice. And then we introduced Privacy Shield, which was obviously way more robust, which was then, of course, invalidated by the European Court of Justice. So, and in the meantime, we did actually reform the Data Protection Act, and we introduced GDPR, which really put focus on some of this in 2018. But the point is, through this time, this focus on data privacy and security and trust has really exploded. You can see what legislators are trying to do. That they're desperately trying to grapple with this situation that is evolving rapidly, playing catch up with these issues of privacy and trust. This area of privacy and trust and ethics is not new, but it is gaining increasing focus, and it's coming way more into context. So as people who work with geographic data in our community, we are acutely aware of the responsibilities that we have around location data, the ethical use of location, particularly where it overlaps with personal information. We understand there are moral and ethical responsibilities here. Legislation is just one factor, and it often lags behind because it needs to respond to what technology is doing. So as machines gain more power to make automated decisions, to make intelligent decisions, the more context they were going to have to make these decisions, the more my personal information is exploitable for good and for ill. So it's vital that as we develop these state-of-the-art technical approaches, that in parallel we develop ethics that govern their use. And some of the challenge, I think, in this area is that the power of location data is still not well understood. The ability that we know about in this community to analyze information spatially, to aggregate information from that perspective and to gain insight is not a broadly held skill set and awareness. And when we couple that with the exponential nature of automated processing and AI, that could create us some real ethical challenges. Now, you might have come across the Locus Charter, which has been put together by a group of geographic organisations to champion wider shared understanding of the risks and solutions relating to location data. Locus is the Latin word for place. We at Esri are a supporter of this, as are lots and lots of other great geospatial organisations as well, people like the Ordnance Survey, the OGC, the Royal Geographical Society, many, many others. Now, these are the founding principles of the Locus Charter. And don't forget, these principles, right, they've been written to help us govern ethical use of location data. But I think what's really interesting today is to look at these principles through the lens of AI. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's take some of them and just give some examples. Realize opportunities, number one. This is about, it's important that we realize the opportunities that we have with location data to drive forward things that we want to achieve, but that we do that in a responsible way. Now, AI gives us many ways to catalyze taking advantage of location data, but it also catalyzes the ways location data could be exploited by orders of magnitude. So there's a real challenge here. Understanding impacts. If we at Esri are offering AI toolsets to our users, we need to make sure that we understand the impacts of those toolsets. Are we being transparent about how they work? Are we enabling people to make informed decisions about their use or understand and interrogate how information has been processed with them? Do no harm. I think it's a really tricky one because first we have to define what harm is. A good example today, I think, is the area of scrutiny right now for AI is the massive environmental impact of running it. Is that harm in and of itself? Or does the good outweigh the harm? The answer will be it's subjective and it's dependent on the context, and sometimes it will do, and sometimes it will be about making more decisions more efficiently, and actually that could create less harm than doing it in traditional ways, and other times it won't be. These are complex areas for us to understand. Addressing bias, number 5. Generative AIs have been demonstrably shown to reflect the bias of their training data. When training data is essentially the internet, we could be in trouble. Governance and transparency are really vital here. Some of the others here are very much about data protection, protecting the vulnerable, minimizing intrusion, minimizing the amount of data that we collect, protecting privacy, preventing identification of individuals. These are really about data protection. Only capture the data you need, use it for the right purposes, get informed consent for anything that could be about invading privacy. The challenge I see here is that if you think about how large language models work, they almost work in exactly the opposite way. They collect as much information as they possibly can. They don't know the questions that they're going to be asked about it. And actually things like the maintaining privacy and maintaining intellectual property and what happens to my data when I put it into these systems, some of that in some circumstances can be quite murky today. We have to tread really carefully in these areas. So there's a real challenge here in how we integrate some of this technology from an ethics perspective, because it goes right against the grain sometimes of some of these fundamental principles. The last one, providing accountability. People should be able to find out how their data is being used, how it's being collected, how it's being aggregated, and have a level of control over that as well. That's really, really important. So how do we make sense of these things then in the era of AI? Well, one of the things that we've done at Esri is to try and put some of this into practice with how we build ArcGIS. And to do that, we've built a trust center to start having some of these conversations. And you can go online and you can find this. And what we've done at Esri is adopted a set of guiding principles that govern how we are choosing to integrate AI with our products. And I hope as we just dip into this, you'll see the locus charter bleeding through the approaches that we've chosen to take here. We talk about security and our commitments in safeguarding and privacy and protecting user data. We want to be transparent about how our models work and provide evidence and explanation about that. We talk about fairness and the principles of ethics running through everything that we do. We want to maintain accountability. We need clear governance. We have this principle of ensuring human oversight in AI-related decision making. And the thing with these principles is that they've been put together so that we know the principles of how we want to embed AI into our products, and they help us make decisions about then what that actually means. What's the outworking of these principles? And some of those I think are really important. Things like the fact that we don't take any ownership over organizations' data who use ArcGIS. We won't use that data to train AI models. It comes from these founding principles. It would break them if we did that. We won't do it. And there are other outworkings of it that you can go and read up on. We've put together a set of safeguards as a result of that. One of those safeguards is that we don't automatically turn on generative AI features in ArcGIS. We allow you as administrators to choose when to turn them on. It gives you a chance to go away and do your due diligence, to read up on this stuff, to align what your principles are with what our principles are and make sure that they connect. And if they don't, you can choose not to use them. And there are other safeguards in place there as well. And also, we want to develop a conversation around this. The use of AI and ethics around this stuff is a shared responsibility. There are things that we have to have in place in our software to make sure that this is good, but there are also things that you need to govern in the implementation of that. And there are ethical constraints and decisions that you need to make inside your organization as you go through. And we want to open a dialogue on this, and we want to help provide best practice on this as well. So there's information on that there as well. So some of that is the practical work that we're doing at Esri. And we are on a journey with this as well. We're not saying that we've got it all sorted. We're definitely on a journey. But we found it's not always just about the ethical use of software or of geography or of location, but it's also about building ethics culture inside our organizations as well. And at Esri, we want ethics to be part of the fabric of our day-to-day culture, and being able to talk about ethical issues of discomfort on projects, questioning the purpose behind something. These things should be safe, normal, and interesting. And we recognize we need to create these environments in our organizations where that's to make sure that that is the case. And that's something that we're actively working on at Esri UK. And by doing this, one of the interesting things we found is that when we're having these conversations with ourselves and on the projects and the organizations that we're working with, we actually see a lot of interest from others in what we're doing. And generally, people are looking for help in these areas. And what we found is it helps to sharpen one another, and it helps us, see and broaden the context of what we're working on when we do this together. So what about the future then? Well, there's obviously a huge opportunity in combining geography and AI. But one thing I think is really important to consider is that if data privacy, if the power of location data, the opportunity with AI, if issues around these areas are not well understood, then people will be fearful of them. And when that happens, usage could be suppressed, it could be reduced, or as legislation catches up, it could even be legislated against. And if that happens as a society, we won't have the opportunity to benefit from many of these approaches. So one of the biggest barriers to the proliferation and the use of geospatial and AI for good might be the misuse or even the perception of misuse of this type of technology. And we as geospatial people in this community, we understand the tools, we understand how they work, we know what can be done with these approaches. We have a responsibility to make sure that others that we engage with across our businesses, organizations, people that we work with in different roles at different levels, that they also have an understanding of this. We have these skills that we put to good use, hopefully to do good things. We need to apply these same skills, this critical thinking, these techniques in our areas of influence to help people understand the specifics of geospatial and AI, how they apply to data ethics, what the problems can be, and how to mitigate them. So my encouragement to you today is Please take part in this conversation. It's an evolving, growing conversation. Help us develop it as a geospatial community. This is not an Esri thing. This is a community thing. And some of these technical innovations that we are seeing are incredibly exciting. They are creating amazing opportunities. But to fully realize that, we also need to develop ethical approaches that provide governance and safety as we go. So I look forward to continuing this conversation and broadening it as well. Thank you. And Alicia, back to you.
Thank you, Mark. An incredibly important topic, and I definitely echo the sentiment. I think there's lots of healthy discussions in that space, but if you haven't already seen it, I would recommend taking a look at the Trust Centre website as well. Okay, so next up, I'd like to welcome Scott, and Scott is going to walk us through what's new in ArcGIS Pro 3.5. So Scott, over to you.
Thanks, Alicia. As said, I'm here to cover what's new in ArcGIS Pro 3.5, which released last month. So the latest version of ArcGIS Pro includes a few new capabilities alongside various enhancements that improve the productivity and performance of existing tools, some of which I've summarized here. There are a fair few more changes in this update, but I'm just going to spend the next few minutes going over some of the most significant changes for you to be aware of. So starting with some productivity updates. There's been an update to definition queries, which are commonly used to filter data. So now, in addition to clauses that filter features based on attribute fields, you can also use spatial clauses, which use the geometry of a layer or map extent. This means you have access to new ways to apply filters to data, such as in this example, where I'm using a spatial clause to filter a supermarket's dataset to show only those that fall within selected counties. Also new are pane sets, which allow you to create specific collections of panes and switch between these based on the task that you're completing. For example, if I need to edit some features, I can switch to the editing pane set, which opens relevant panes like the create and modify features panes, as well as the attributes pane. And that can be a lot quicker than opening each of those panes individually. In addition to the built-in options, you can also create custom pane sets. For example, I've created one called General, so I can quickly switch back to a view that includes all the panes I regularly use. And I've also created another pane set called Scripting, which includes panes like the Python window. Moving on from pane sets, quite a significant new feature is portal projects for ArcGIS Enterprise. So these are cloud-based ArcGIS Pro projects that are stored and managed in your portal, which allow multiple users on multiple machines to work collaboratively on the same project. This way of sharing projects is quite different to the existing ways to share work, using something like a project package or a project file, as these are essentially a static snapshot of the project from one point in time. So the difference with a portal project is that they're updated for all users whenever one user saves a change that they have made. So to explain how this works conceptually, user 1 on the left here might create a new portal project and add a blank map. When they save that project, it gets uploaded to the portal. User 2 on the right here can then download that project from the portal. They might then make some changes, such as adding a layer to the map. And when they save those changes, it will again be updated in the portal. User 1 can then refresh their project to receive those updates, and they might do a change like the base map. At the same time, user 2 may continue to add additional layers to the map, and so you can see at this point that two users are working in two different versions of the same project. So if user 2 now presses save, they'll be presented with a warning that their changes may overwrite another user's version of the project. So at this point, users would need to have a quick conversation about what changes have taken place and decide which version they want to keep. Once they've got that agreement, user 2 can proceed with overwriting the project in the portal with their version. User 1 can then get the updated project from the portal, and then maybe they want to change the base map back and save, and so on. So what does that actually look like in ArcGIS Pro? Well, when you create a portal project, there's an interface that shows the different options available and the requirements for each, such as where folders, geodatabases, and toolboxes should be stored. When you work on a portal project, you're making changes to a local version, which are synced to the portal version when you press the Save button. Others working on the project can press the Get Updates button to receive the latest changes to their local version of the project. And as I alluded to a minute ago, in scenarios where multiple people work on the same project at the same time, there's a risk of overwriting each other's work. So there's also an inbuilt conflict resolution interface available, which looks like this. And there's also the ability to view and restore project versions from the recent save history, just in case your work is overwritten by someone else. Moving on to data management and geoprocessing. There is now a new editing setting to display different types of vertices and nodes, which helps you to understand the features and how they are connected to each other. This can allow you to identify potentially problematic elements while editing, such as disconnected points at the ends of lines or pseudonodes that could show you where features should probably be merged together. And you can also customize the symbology of these vertices and nodes to make sure that they don't clash with the symbology of any other layers in your map. There have been a few improvements to the Calculate field tool. So firstly, in addition to Python, Arcade, and VB script, you can now use SQL expressions to perform field calculations on data in file geodatabases. Using SQL has the advantage of faster processing time, and it was previously only supported for feature services and enterprise geodatabases. Also, Pro now remembers your recently used expressions, so you can reuse them in new calculations by selecting the Recent button. Finally, there's also a new Convert Spatial Units Python helper function to provide a template for expressions that convert area or length values from one unit to another. It's worth noting that there was a bug in the initial version of Pro 3.5 that meant selections or definition queries on the input data would be ignored when using an SQL-based field calculation, which meant that all of your data would be modified by the tool rather than just that selected subset. But this has been fixed in a 3.5.1 patch released at the start of June, so that's quite an important update to make sure that you complete. There have also been a few improvements to Model Builder in this release. These include a new progress window that displays when you run a model, which gives you more information on the outcome of that model run than you had previously, including things like additional warnings and details on errors. Also, if you've installed the optional AI model components for ArcGIS Pro, then semantic search is now available in the Model Builder search interface after being added to other parts of Pro in the previous update. This allows you to use natural language prompts and phrases to search for tools rather than just using simple keywords. Also, tool suggestions are also available, which will recommend tools to add to your model based on what you've added so far. Another really useful new feature is the addition of the memory workspace. This allows you to write outputs of geoprocessing tools to a temporary area rather than to a file on disk. This is useful because writing data to memory is often a lot faster, and it's particularly useful when you're doing testing or you don't need to save the outputs of your analysis. So to write to the memory workspace, you just need to select the icon next to the output field, which is available on most geoprocessing tools. And the last thing I'm going to cover is the new options for overwriting data when you run a geoprocessing tool on a dataset that already exists. So prior to this release, if an output dataset had the same name as an existing dataset, the existing dataset would be deleted and replaced with the new one. In Pro 3.5, this is still the default behavior, but you now have additional options to choose from that allow you to overwrite the data without altering the schema of the target dataset. That can be particularly helpful when you need to overwrite data that has been published to your portal and you want to avoid breaking any maps or apps that reference them. I think this is best explained in a quick demo. So here I have a very basic dashboard of London crime data for 2025, which summarizes the numbers and types of crimes reported in January, February, and March. I'm able to do things like filter using the month field, and an indicator value at the bottom tells me that the latest available data is from March 2025. So let's look at how I can use the new overwrite options to load in a dataset from April. So in Pro, I have a CSV table containing crimes reported in April. And typically to get this added into my feature service in ArcGIS Online, I would need to convert the table to a point feature class and then append it using a separate tool. But I can now do this in just one step. So using the XY to point tool, I'll enter my table and I'll point it at my feature service that the crimes dashboard is based on. I can see that I've got a warning message that states the output layer already exists. And I can also see the new overwrite options have appeared at the bottom. Out of these options, I'll be choosing append to existing rather than the default delete existing and create new. While this runs, the records in my table will be converted to points and then appended into the feature service automatically. What that means is if I go back to my dashboard and click refresh, I'll now see that all of the dashboard elements update to show the new data from the month of April without any additional configuration required, all because the service was overwritten in a way that didn't modify the underlying schema. So I can now see that my latest available data is available from April. So hopefully that was a useful and quick overview of some of the latest features in ArcGIS Pro. That's all I have time to cover today, but I've included a list of resources here, which will be included in the follow-up material if you'd like to learn more.
Thank you, Scott. Some great features there. And for anybody who missed the first couple of slides, please do not worry. We will be sending a recording and the slide deck through shortly, so you will have a chance to catch up. So next, I'd like to hand it over to Isla.
Hello, can you see my screen okay?
I can see your screen okay, Isla. Yes, that's coming through.
Amazing. Okay, thank you. I'll now take you through the scheduled user type updates that will arrive with the next ArcGIS Online release. Before we start, please just note that everything mentioned in this part is still subject to change until the release itself. And to find out what has been included in the update, make sure to have a look at the release blog and the What's New documentation pages for ArcGIS Online after the release. At the moment, the release is expected to happen overnight between the 25th and the 26th of June. The update will happen automatically, so we should wake up to the new features on the 26th. But on to the user type changes. We're currently expecting the user type capabilities to be extended through the addition of 4 apps. It's important to note that these apps are already available in ArcGIS Online through additional licenses, and all that's changed here is how you access them. And this also has the added benefit of increasing the capabilities of these user types and allowing them to provide more value. And I'll go through these apps in a little bit more detail to help you understand what they can be used for and their potential. So let's start with ArcGIS Navigator, which will be available with mobile worker user types and above. ArcGIS Navigator is a mobile navigation app for Android and iOS that allows you to route your workers in the field in both online and offline environments. It allows you to connect to your own custom network databases, use multiple stops per route, and recalculate routes automatically. Next, we have ArcGIS Business Analyst, which will be available for creator user types and above. ArcGIS Business Analyst allows you to make business decisions through analyzing markets spatially and has built-in demographic, spending, lifestyle, and census data to achieve this purpose. Its strengths include evaluating and comparing locations, understanding demographics, and using infographics and reports to understand trends in the data. It also includes tutorials of common workflows and now an AI assistant, which can both enhance your business analysis workflows and make them easier to complete. However, do be aware that many actions in ArcGIS Business Analyst do consume credits, so it is recommended that you also review the general credit management documentation. Next up is ArcGIS City Engine, which will be available for professional users and above. ArcGIS City Engine allows you to build realistic urban environments quickly through customized rules. You can incorporate GIS data to make realistic digital twins or design completely new cities from scratch. You have the ability to view your built structures in context and test different designs to find the best fit. If you want some help getting started with ArcGIS City Engine, you can find tutorials and other resources on the product page on the Esri UK website, or you can sign up for the City Engine for Professionals course that is run by our Learning Services team. And we'll put the link for this course in the follow-up email for this webinar. ArcGIS City Engine has been used in some really exciting projects, including being featured on several films and TV shows, such as on its Discovery Channel. And to find out more about how ArcGIS City Engine was used for this, you can check out this blog about how they created a modern version of Washington, D.C. on Esri's website. Finally, to round this off, ArcGIS Urban will be available for Professional Plus users. And with ArcGIS Urban, you can use your digital twins to plan and keep track of simultaneous projects across cities. It allows you to integrate external project data such as 3D content or BIM data, and you can collaborate with others by getting and incorporating feedback as the project develops. The dynamic capabilities of ArcGIS Urban can help with capacity planning for potential sites, while the 3D visualization of different scenarios leads itself well to urban planning and stakeholder engagement. If you want to see ArcGIS Urban in action, you can check out the housing session from our most recent annual conference. But that's everything from me and what user type changes are scheduled to come in the next ArcGIS Online update. Just a reminder to also keep an eye out on the 26th to see what new features have also come to the ArcGIS Online apps. And with that, it's back over to you, Alicia.
Thank you, Isla. So next up we have Priya. And again, anybody tuning in today, if you are experiencing any issues as we share, please let us know on Slido and we will try and correct it as soon as possible. So with that, Priya, over to you.
Hi everyone, good morning. I'm Priya. Today I'm here to talk about what's new in ArcGIS Enterprise 11.5 and why it marks a major milestone. So 11.5, which released on last month, is a long-term support release on Windows and Linux. That means there would be 4 years of patching and technical support, meaning that goes through 2029. And then there would be additional 2 years of technical support after that. ArcGIS 12.0 will not contain any JavaScript 3 based application. It's going to contain JavaScript 4 based application, which means it will not include ArcGIS Web App Builder, ArcGIS Configurable Apps, or MapViewer Classic. This application have been replaced by their modern successor based on 4X. That includes Experience Builder, Instance App, and MapViewer respectively. Let's see the product highlight in ArcGIS Enterprise 11.5. So the interesting highlights of ArcGIS Enterprise 11.5 for the MapViewer is Configure Feature Template. Prior to this release, the feature template for the hosted feature layer could be managed using MapViewer Classic or Fill Map Designer. In 11.5, supporting for configuration feature template directly in the MapViewer so that user do not need to switch to separate app to manage feature template. Next, we got the ability to embed map. Embed any public web map in the MapViewer using ready-to-use HTML code. Also, we can customize this HTML code and utilize it. There are few more updates in the MapViewer in this release, which is view and manage attachment in the table, configure support for the display, new multi-tab experience, and many more. Also, MapViewer Classic is deprecated, and ArcGIS Enterprise 11.5 is the last release to support MapViewer Classic. It is planned to remove in our next release, therefore it's time to switch to MapViewer. Next off, we got Deep Learning Model in the Living Atlas. This is the exciting capability to integrate deep learning model with your organization's Living Atlas content. Previously, users had to download the deep learning package from ArcGIS Online Living Atlas to add them as an item to their organization. This could result in a multiple version of same item for a different item owner, then outdated model and which caused a lack of consistency across the item. GIS administrator can now browse and add individual deep learning model from ArcGIS Living Atlas to their organization. As you see it here, we have downloaded 2 deep learning model. It takes a couple of minutes to get downloaded. Once the model is downloaded, we can see the item details page and more about the model itself. Also, the GIS administrator can go ahead and update the deep learning model when there is a new update comes up. Also, if it's not required, administrator can go ahead and delete the deep learning model which are not being used or required. In order to utilize this deep learning model, we need to configure image server. There are some additional tools, administrator tools, which I would be discussing moving ahead. So what is this About API? This is a new feature in ArcGIS Enterprise. This allows the administrator to quickly view the machine names, information about the number of resources available such as CPU, RAM, operating system, license type, and many more of ArcGIS Enterprise component. This helps the administrator to insight into the number and the size of the machine. This can also help to support a strategic planning, financial review, and resource acquisition. It has been introduced a new operation which is report and redact hostname. Let's go into the detail to see more. Within the server administrator, we will find a new About API that provides an information about all the machine within the site. Similarly, within the portal administrator, we will find same About API with the portal information. Additionally, information about the federated server data store from the hosting server as well. We can see two supported operations down here at the bottom, which is redact hostname and report. Redact operation will replace all the hostname found within the URL or the machine names, and it will replace it by redact.example.com. Consider if we are working in a secured environment and in a technical support. This quickly generates a report of overall deployment without need to manually go and mask any sensitive information. Next off, in ArcGIS Enterprise 11.5, one of the interesting feature is service usage by user report in ArcGIS Server Admin. This report shows how often each user accesses a service. It gives a clearer view of which users are using which services the most. This helps the administrator to understand the user's pattern, improve the performance planning, and make a better decision about the content and access. As you see it here, I have configured a service with the sample world cities to check which users have been using this services and how many times this service was accessed. As you see it here, it shows that a couple of users have been using this service, and at the end it shows the number of time that user have accessed this service. Also, it tells about which time the service was accessed by which user. This helps to perform better understanding about the service as well. Next off, we got audit logs. Although the audit logging was introduced in ArcGIS Enterprise 11.4 for the portal, now we have audit logging available for ArcGIS Server as well. It records the user's activity and some changes made to the system. This will help to monitor and troubleshoot any potential critical or breaking changes by identifying which users or the processes that have made these changes. This effect on the system and why and when it occurred. This allows the IT administrator to check the ArcGIS server activity and improve the security and compliance. The logs are recorded in a JSON syntax as you see it here. The next new feature is sublayer search. This feature helps the GIS analyst and the administrator to quickly find sublayer by reducing the unnecessary content. It removes the need to manage the sublayers separately or create a duplicate layer, keeping the system clean and efficient. As you see it here, we are trying to look for a school sublayer within the ArcGIS organization content. So it shows which particular hosted feature layer has a school sublayer. It shows if we open the item details, it will show that we have a school sublayer within the landmark group hosted layer. For example, if we take another example, if we look for a building sublayer within ArcGIS content, it will show which layers have the building sublayers in it. And if we preview it, it will show the layer detail and it will show, okay, particular this land group layer has the building sublayer. Next up, we have a couple of updates for web application. So ArcGIS dashboard now have a dual access chart and element header. ArcGIS Experience Builder include Express mode. ArcGIS Instance app have 3 new template, which is Compare, Observe, and Stream Flow Viewer. ArcGIS Story Map stories briefing and collection reflects their item classification. And lastly, ArcGIS Web Editor includes web editing and utility network editing enhancement. If you are looking to learn more about ArcGIS Enterprise 11.5, I will encourage you to check out these blogs and documentation, which will be shared after the presentation. Thank you. I will hand over to Alicia now.
Thank you, Priya. And last but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce you to Ben, who's going to talk us through a task in field maps. And again, Ben, when you're ready, if you can just try and share and unshare twice, and hopefully the screen can be shared and seen by everybody. But thank you again to
Sure thing.
everybody for your patience. Thank you.
Hello everyone. So I'm going to talk about a new exciting capability coming to ArcGIS Field Maps, which are tasks. So as this headline of an ArcGIS blog indicates, there is a pretty big update on the way for ArcGIS Field Maps, which is expected to be released later this year. And one key capability coming to this update are tasks. So tasks are a functionality which have been anticipated for a little while now, and they represent the start of the migration of key functionality from ArcGIS Workforce. So they're essentially a digital to-do list which can be configured by organizations to assign and manage workflows for field workers. But they go beyond that as well. So you can actually describe the priorities and the details of the work as well. And people back at the office can get visibility into the progress and the status of tasks. And so this can be done using any ArcGIS client that supports editing a feature service. And lastly, tasks can be integrated with other existing external business systems. And that is something which I'll be showing an example of in a little bit. So really, this is a functionality which transforms field maps and it enables users to manage work orders and workflows without having to switch to another system. So what are tasks in a practical sense? Well, they are features on a map. So they can be points, lines, or polygons. The details of the tasks, like the status and the assignee or the priority, all live within the attribute table of that feature. And those details can also be displayed in pop-ups, just like any other feature. Organizations can customize tasks by adding steps, fields, and defining user interactions through context-driven actions. And this helps to form guided workflows. Tasks have statuses, so they can be assigned, in progress, and completed, for example, and this controls how the tasks appear to the field workers. So how do you enable tasks? Well, here I am in the early access version of Field Maps Designer, and in this demo, I've just chosen the Asset Inspection predefined template. So in the Layers tab on the left, you'll see that we have some predefined layers with this template. So we have an Assets Points layer, and we also have a table for our asset inspection records. So you can see that I have selected my Asset Points layer, and I'm going to task enable this layer so that we have tasks attached to the assets. Now in another workflow, you can also just add a new layer in Field Maps and then task enable it in that process. So to enable my assets layer, I will head to the tasks tab, which gives me the option to enable tasks. Now what this means is that in the attribute table of the assets points layer, there'll be new fields created for the information like the status, priority, and assignee. Now we can just use a default configuration to do this, or you can create your own custom values for task statuses. But either way, you can still customize the default configuration. And so that's what I've done here. Now, after a bit of loading, you'll see that it generates what are known as task layouts. Now, layouts are essentially how the tasks are structured. So it's how you can design them, how they can look, and how they can work. So you can think of layouts as each step in a workflow. So here we have 4 layouts. We have unassigned, assigned, in progress, and completed. And the user will move step by step through these layouts whilst carrying out a task. Now, within each layout, we have actions. So when mobile workers interact with tasks in the Field Maps app, these appear as buttons as actions to take as part of carrying out that task. So for example, if you look at the in progress layout, you'll see that we have a finish action with notes, and we have an action for attaching other documents, etc. There are many actions that you can add. So here I am opening the in progress layout, and you can see we have our list of actions which we can reorder just by clicking and dragging. We can group them together, or we can remove any ones that we don't want. And so it's a really simple design layout which is familiar with the rest of Field Maps. And on the side panel there, we can see that we have a whole other host of other actions that we can just drag and drop in. So for example, I can just drag in an interaction action and integrate that with the other apps. Now in the task settings on the right there is where we can configure the task schema. So we can filter how they appear to workers. For example, you might want to filter based on departments. You can also remove priorities, statuses, and types along with their coded values. So here I am adding a new status to my tasks called reassigned, and I'm giving that a coded value of 4. In this space is where we can also add assignees. So assignees are a list of users that can be assigned to tasks. So here I am adding myself. Now here we are in the mobile workers view. So you can see that we have 2 tasks assigned to me, and they appear as points on a map, but also as a list in the assigned tasks list. So we can open up that list and we can view the details. So this is where we can see that first layout that we set up for the assigned status. So we can see here that we have information like the due date, the priority, and the description. We can also see related records for that task. So here we have that asset inspection records table, which can be filled out alongside doing the task. So you can see that here our tasks are linked to our inspections. Now, when I choose to carry out a task, I can hit the start button and it will take me to the next layout for the in progress status, where again here I have the actions for that layout. So like adding notes, attaching files. So here I am just adding a note saying we finished the task. And then once that task is complete, we can hit the finish button and then it will change the status of that task to completed and then take me to the next layout. Now, once I close that task, it will then take me back to the task list and it will have removed it from the map. So the field worker can no longer see that task. So that's that filtering getting in action. Now, another key element of tasks, which I touched on a couple of times previously, is system integration. So, for example, tasks can integrate field operations with enterprise risk management systems. So what you can see in the video here is an example of that shown at a recent energy resources conference, where ArcGIS has been integrated with SAP S4, which is a work order management system. And tasks are being used to assign work to workers in the field from SAP. But also it's being used to send information back from field maps to SAP. And you can see there that this information is then being used to automatically calculate the time and monetary costs of that work. So it's a really good example of the sorts of integration that you can achieve with this. And I'll include a link to the full presentation of this along with the resources sent after this webinar. Now, finally, what is the release timeline for all of this? Well, right now we are in the beta release of the mobile app and the Field Maps Designer. But also last month, the Designer was released at general availability for ArcGIS Enterprise 11.5. And next month, we'll see the same for ArcGIS Online. And then finally, later in the last third quarter of the year, we'll see general availability of the mobile app alongside the Field Maps Designer for both ArcGIS Online and Enterprise. So the key thing you'll notice here is that it does break away from a normal release pattern for field maps in that the designer and the app are being released at different stages. But just note that the capability will come together again in that third quarter of 2025 with the release of the mobile app. So there we have it. That's a quick overview of an exciting new capability coming to ArcGIS Field Maps. Resources will be shared for this following the webinar, including a link to that blog I showed at the start. And finally, we also did a technical session at this year's annual conference, which did showcase this feature. So I recommend watching that too if you'd like to learn more. Thank you, everyone. And back to you, Alicia.
Thank you, Ben. Great session. So just to wrap things up, let me just share and unshare my screen, and hopefully everyone on today's call can see the final few pages. So great segue, Ben. So for anybody who wasn't able to make it to our annual conference, now is a great opportunity to watch the recordings back. So they are now live on our website. If you also weren't able to get to every single session, then it's a great opportunity when you've got time to take a deep dive into the resources. So you'll find that on our website. But again, if you want the quick link, do take a look at the QR code. So in terms of what's next, we will be back together next month on the 24th of July, where we will be running a session on extending and customizing your ArcGIS Experience Builder apps. In particular, we'll be taking a little bit of a closer look as to how we can extend with Arcade before we jump into the Developer Edition version. So before we close today's session out, just a quick reminder, if you do have any final questions you'd like to log with us, upvote, or if you've got time, we would really appreciate that you take a look at the poll section of Slido. Again, once more, you've got the QR code on screen and the event code. So as we wrap today's session up, I just want to say a huge thank you to today's presenters. And again, apologies to everybody on today's call for the technical hitches. Hopefully, when we're back next quarter, we'll be back up and running. But for now, I hope you get a chance to get out into the sun, enjoy your lunch break, and we look forward to seeing you next quarter. Thank you all, and bye for now.